Well, hello, everyone on Family History Fanatics and the Write Your Family History YouTube channel. My name is Devin Noel Lee, and today I am super excited to have one of my longtime friends, Jen Baldwin from FindMyPast, and we are doing a writing challenge. Actually, I asked her if she would challenge me to do this writing, so she's an innocent party in this. But Jen and I have been genealogy friends for quite a long time. We've had a number of interviews. I think she's fabulous. And today we're going to talk about her ancestor, Archibald Mackenzie.
Yeah, Mackenzie.
Right?
Yeah, we can call him Archie if you want.
Archie. Okay.
I don't know if he went by Archie, but it feels like he might have been an Archie.
Okay. Yeah. We will call him Archie. I just have to remember not to call him Archie McDougal because that was my friend in college. So
yeah, two different guys.
Very much. Quite a continent and many, many decades apart. But anyway, so to get started, Jen, can you tell me about what drove you to research Archibald and how are you connected to him other than just he's on your family tree?
Right. So first, thanks for having me, Devin. This is fantastic. I'm really excited to be on with you today and talking about Archie. Archibald Mackenzie is my fourth times great grandfather on my maternal side. So my mom is basically Irish German, and so he's the Irish. It's where my Irish family comes from. When we talk about my Irish American side, he is the primary patriarch immigrant that came from Ireland to the United States. So my whole Irish line descends from Archibald, basically. I have been working on Archibald off and on pretty steadily for like the last 10 to 15 years.
Oh, wow.
One of my mom's cousins also worked on Archibald quite a lot. And she was able to make a DNA connection several years ago. So that helps because we still have a distant cousin sitting in Ireland that kind of gave us some extra information and set us on the path for research. We also have used Archibald's story a couple times at FindMyPast, most recently in our podcast, A Family History Of, where we explored his experience in the Great Famine with my guest, Fiona Fitzsimmons, who is a professional genealogist. She is well known in Ireland. She's done genealogy for like the Bidens and the Obamas and other political figures and celebrities and all sorts of things. She also is a adjunct professor and lecturer at Trinity College Dublin. So she's got this massive background and incredible history and knowledge. So we had her on as a guest in the podcast, and we were able to kind of dig in and delve into Archie's story in a little bit more detail. So he's been a fun one to research. Not that he has been easy. It's been very challenging. And there's lots of nuances along the way and I don't want to get it too ahead of ourselves, but just to give an example, he was baptized as a Protestant and then married a Catholic. And if you know anything at all about Irish history, you know that could be problematic. But that's where my Catholic family originates from, actually. So there's a lot of little nuances to Archibald's story. It's been a fun one to dig into.
So now that you said that was wonderful because I misinterpreted something already when we get into the draft. But that's the beauty of what I'm going to be sharing later. I'm not sharing a polished draft. I'm sharing a rough draft. And I'm reading things the best that I'm able to. And then I hand it back to the person who challenges me and they can polish it up. So I already know I got something wrong. No problem.
That's okay. To be honest, I missed it for a long time. And it wasn't until, I don't know, probably in the last month or two that I was like, oh, wait a second. This is not a Catholic baptism.
Which is funny. I was going to say this to later, but I think it fits here. I have been trying to draft it. Normally in the writing challenges, I try not to spend too much time because I want the challenge to show that you can do this fairly rapidly.
Sure. Yeah.
But it was about 6:00 last night where I asked, wait a minute. What would have been the cause of the riot that we're going to focus on? I was going down just one path instead of another path. And so that was kind of fun. So sometimes late in the game, your ancestor to be like, hey, you're going the wrong way.
Hey.
Exactly. I wanted to share this little file that you sent me, if you don't mind, before we keep going. Where is my one where I have you? Okay, there you are. You're back. You disappeared. I'm sorry. I don't know what happened. But this document you put together was fantastic. I like how you organize things. I really like that you mentioned that AI was involved in
gotta do it.
Of your gathering. Hold the thought for a minute, because let's come back and ask kind of what you were using. I think it was some of the historical context, but I could be wrong. Yeah. But we've got maps, we've got these clippings of the baptisms, one of the ones that you mentioned, and it just goes on and on. You explained the father's occupation, you transcribed the different newspaper articles. This was so well done, and I liked how you organized it. And of course, you keep disappearing.
I think it's funny that every time you share a screen, it's a different version.
Yeah, well,
we're in one corner,
there we go.
In the other corner. That's great.
Okay.
Keeping people on their toes is all.
Yeah, absolutely. It's live. You can make all these custom screens, but then they don't work when you think they're supposed to. I don't know. We'll figure it out, and we'll have fun on the way. Yep. So that was really great. Now, was that a collaboration with you and your team, or was this contributions from the cousin that you mentioned?
So that document that you were just sharing, that's kind of accumulation of things. So it's a little bit of past and previous research, although the material that my cousin did, or my mom's cousin, is almost all entirely DNA based, so that's not included in that document. There's no DNA analysis there, so that document has been kind of fed into, because a couple of years ago I did another podcast episode for our other podcast, Was Justice Served? And it was talking about the legalities behind the charges that he was brought up against. So there's kind of that analysis document, and then there's the research analysis, and then there's the family tree stuff, and then there's a collection on FindMyPast of all the newspaper clippings. So it's all of that, and I finally just got tired of dealing with all these multiple documents, so I shoved it all into one, and that's the output. That is my work. So that the research that's done at FindMyPast is done by a team of people, which I'm very privileged to be a part of, but this project was my project, and I didn't really let anybody else touch it.
And so you have that AI disclaimer. What did you do when you were compiling that document that was AI related?
So a lot of the AI that I use is mostly around analysis and looking for things I missed. So my almost always my first question to an AI tool, whether it's something like ChatGPT or Copilot or whatever, is analyze this for holes. Have I missed anything really big that I need to make sure I go back to? Are there other because AI will read all your citations and everything. So it'll be, at one point it was like, you don't really have, I don't know, the National Archives of Ireland listed very much. Don't overlook that. Obviously you need to utilize that as a resource, right? And primarily, the initial phases of that research were almost all online. So it was primarily FindMyPast and our newspaper collection as my citations. So there's a lot of that type of work that I use AI for. The other piece of AI for me is looking at the social context. So I use a framework called SPICE. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but so it's an acronym that's used by history teachers, actually, and it gives you framework to kind of think about all of the different facets of life. So their social life, their political life, their interaction with their environment, the economics of their life. And I use that as my guide when I'm talking about social context. And I go, all right, AI system, what parts of this framework can I apply to this particular part of the story?
Yes. Nice. I love that. And I closed out that file. I think you had that at the very, 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 very bottom.
Yes, at the very bottom. It's always the last thing.
I wasn't sure what it was, but I was like, oh, yeah, I look at those things. I didn't realize there was an actual acronym and thought behind it.
Yeah, it's worth, if you just Google it, SPICE acronym in like history, like SPICE history or whatever, it will pop up. And, and for me, it's just a really simple, easy way to remember, have I considered all of the things?
For sure. I love it. I love it. Okay, so my next question, this is really about writing today. And
okay, yes, yeah, I should talk about writing.
No, that's right. What is your background with writing the stories of your ancestors? How much have you done? How confident do you feel? Let's go there.
So my writing has primarily been in research documents. I do a lot of analysis. I don't do a lot of creative writing. I don't do a lot of narrative style writing. At FindMyPast, honestly, we have a team for that. Like we have there are professionals that are far better writers than I am to help me pull those things together. And also the language that we use at FindMyPast, of course, is directed towards the British and Irish audience. So there are some words that I would not typically use that is everyday vocabulary for them. So they kind of keep me on top of things in that direction. Personally, I have even then done in my own personal research, done more probably research style writing versus a narrative flow. Occasionally I will write something for my dad. And that's probably the extent of it, but that's like an email that I send to him to help him understand the story and like what, the details and the nuances and like the gossip from the family and not like the documented evidence.
All right. Yeah. So this will be fun then.
This is going to be fun. Yeah.
What a professional genealogist thinks about how the crazy family history fanatic person likes to write stories. Now, I do want to brag a little bit and go into something about you very quickly if I can remember which button to hit. Bear with me for a minute. Let's see. Nope.
You got it.
That one. Okay. Now I think I know which one we'll go to. Okay. So this was at RootsTech. This was your presentation at RootsTech. And I said it was a 10 out of 10. We'll watch again and again and again. It was about reading between the lines of newspapers. And I think this is going to set up the stage for the story we're going to talk about today with Archie. But just give us a brief overview of the principles that we need to keep in mind when we're evaluating records to ensure that we don't swing too far on the misinterpretation pendulum.
Right. So and thank you for your video that you did on your RootsTech review. It was really nice. The whole concept here is when we're reading and utilizing historical newspapers, we have to understand what that newspaper actually said. It's not that they printed every little thing is an actual fact. Newspapers are written with bias and with editorial preferences and sometimes creativity. And we have to understand the background of the newspaper so that we can interpret it appropriately for our research. So we can't just take a newspaper clipping and go, that is exactly what happened, because there's only usually one voice being represented in that newspaper clipping. So in the example we're going to talk about today with Archie's story, he's actually never able to give his voice to the newspaper content. And that's really important because we are interpreting what happened to him directly, but we don't ever actually hear it from his mouth. So there are 5 questions to ask of every newspaper article. So the 5 questions are: what actually happened? Who is telling the story? What language is shaping our judgment today? And what changes when we add context to that newspaper article so we understand it in more detail? And then what is missing? So in that case, it might be Archie's voice. Those 5 questions I ask of every newspaper article that I review. And yeah, this is something that I will also feed into AI and just have it spit out back at me. But
why not?
Why not? But this is something that becomes habitual. And if you start interpreting historical newspapers in the same way that we analyze and interpret historical documents, you actually get so much more out of that paper.
Yeah.
And in an area like Ireland, where there is such a limited amount of resources in historical evidence, newspapers become really essential, but you have to understand what you're reading.
Exactly. And in context, this can apply not just to newspapers. I was thinking about a sermon that was, I wouldn't say word for word transcribed into the meeting minutes of my German ancestor in Columbus, Ohio, but it was upon the death of his toddler that drowned in a well he had just dug. And it sounds incredibly scathing of blaming this poor man and wife for not keeping an eye on a kid. And so you could say, oh, well, he's just a deadbeat dad. Why are you so dumb? And then you realize, well, he did go through an effort, or at least seems to suggest he went through an effort. He just dug it. He was had a newborn plus this toddler.
Oh my gosh.
There's a lot of elements and they're just building this place. It wasn't always fully built, wonderful, many-year farm.
Right.
He has to go out and build everything. My wife just had a baby and they have a toddler. So I doubt that was really good, but maybe we're also misinterpreting the goal of the preacher, minister, whatever the Catholic person was. Maybe he was just like, please be careful of your kiddos, please, instead of you need it,
Yeah,
that
totally.
tone isn't there.
Yeah.
So those questions I think apply to not just newspapers, but anything we come across.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. So we are going to dive into a couple of things about Archie. I'm going to go ahead and bring him up on the screen, the start of the story. Now, for those who actually want to read the document, if you go to the video description, I have a link to the article so that you can see it if it's too small on screen. And Jen also has the link so that she can see it on screen.
Yeah, because I'm blind.
You know what? So am I.
Mine has to be zoomed in a lot.
Yeah. So one of the things, so you gave me quite a bit of information to start with, and I'm going to go back here for a minute. You gave me quite a bit of information to start with, and I decided the story I wanted to focus on the most was the story of when he was part of a riot, and then he was sentenced to 4 months in jail. And I wanted to open this scene, and we're going to go to that scene. We're going to open to that scene. And Jen, are you able to read it?
Yep.
I'd like to have you read it.
Oh, you want me to read it out loud?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
so the first 3 paragraphs?
Yeah, the first.
Okay. On Thursday, 18 December 1845, Archibald Mackenzie stood before the magistrates in Macroom and waited to hear how much of his life would be taken from him. He was 27 years old, a husband, and the father of 2 small children. The courtroom on Barrack Lane was already active when his turn before the bar occurred. Archibald hadn't paid much attention to the earlier matters of licenses, paperwork, and the ordinary business of a local authority. His mind was on his case, and when it was announced, the atmosphere in the room tensed. The landowners and wealthy tradesmen leaned forward. Townsfolk from the lower classes stood in the back and strained to hear. Archibald scanned the crowd of Macroom, where his father had served in his childhood. Some of the faces belonged to the neighbors. Some had hired him, and some were family. Yet on this morning, he was no longer simply Archibald Mackenzie, husband and father. He was the accused.
What do you think?
So, okay, knee-jerk reaction when the first time I opened this document, and I went, oh, she writes in a very different way than I do.
Well, yes.
Yes. What I think is it's very, it's rooted in fact. It's incredibly dramatic. So for me, this was definitely, like I said, my knee-jerk reaction was I need to start thinking about Archibald in a very different, like the Archibald research and the scenario that I've pulled together in a very different way. Yeah. There are some parts of this when I went, is that true? Have I, and then the secondary thought is, did I miss something really obvious that she saw that I was like, oh, I had not pictured that moment. I really hadn't pictured this moment for myself. And it gave a very, what's the word I'm looking for? It definitely made it feel more alive, but it also made me think, who was in the courtroom? Can I prove that? Can I find it? Is there evidence? Is there anything anywhere that actually says his wife was there, or a family members were there? Like it actually made me just ask more genealogical questions.
Right. Yes. And that goes to a couple of principles that I teach here on this channel. First of all, you can change it however you want, obviously, because I'm going to give it to you and I want you to mark it up. If you're uncomfortable with something like, I don't know if this family was there, then you, by all means, take it out. But we can use, your UK viewers are going to laugh at me. They're going to be like, this is not true. However, in a way it is. I'm a huge fan of the Poldark series. And so,
sure. Yeah.
So when I'm thinking about the court trial, it's very different than American courtrooms.
Yes.
It's not, you can't handle the truth, but it's, Ross Poldark saying clemency would have been better served today. And you're asking people to eat by not even bread alone. Like, but I imagine, the guys in the wigs and the black robes and they're raised and the defendants there. And also something that would be, I'd put it into the story. I had to make a judgment, but you can do some more research and clarify. I don't know if he had counsel, because that's an American right to defense counsel, but it's not necessarily a guarantee in Ireland, particularly in the 1840s. And even if he had a right to it, would he have been able to afford it? So I never presented him of having that counsel per se, but who's going to be there? So I'm imagining Poldark. You're going to have the wealthy merchants and, well-to-do, just because it's entertainment, for crying out loud, right? And he did have siblings that were alive at the time that were born around and how do you say the town name?
Macroom.
Macroom, thank you. That's going to come to another point if I remember it.
Yeah, it's well practiced.
So if they're around, it's the entertainment in town. They're going to show up because this is their loved ones. Now, I tried to keep it vague and not say she was there.
Right.
Because that I don't know. I don't know if she's there.
Yeah.
But Melza showed up for her husband's trial, so if she could be there, I'm sure she's going to be there. But then where are the kiddos going to be? So that's, you can take, Carol Baxter in a video that I did with her, is that you can take some judgment in order to make a scene. And I went ahead and had the judgments if there was going to be some of the, he would be scanning the I forget where it is, neighbors. Well, yeah, neighbors. This is his community, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Now, I made some with hired him because you never revealed his occupation.
Because we don't know for sure.
Huh?
We don't know for sure.
Exactly. But he would have worked somewhere.
He would have worked somewhere. Yeah. And he was probably a laborer of some kind, but we just don't know.
Yeah. So while they could be neighbors, they could also have offered him work. So, and then family, some were likely family. And if you wanted to check it out, you can. But it is dramatic because what I invite people to do is hop on the shoulder rather than get inside his head.
Yeah, I like that expression. Yeah.
I'm not going to I don't believe in doing dialogue. So let me pull up my guardrail document. This is when I started, and I haven't completely finalized yet, which is why I haven't shared on Family History Fanatics. It's a work in progress, but there are some guardrails that I have for when I'm writing. The first is I'm going to lean into emotion instead of force a theme. And so while we could say this is a story of oppression, I don't see how he's directly oppressed because I don't know what his job was. I don't know what his battles were. We don't have his voice. But we can say that there's oppression around him, but I don't want to make that the theme of the story. I don't know what his faith is, although you talk about the faith. I don't know how it's playing into this actual role, so I'm not going to go there. And so generally speaking, I advise people not to force in a theme. Let them be there naturally and trust your readers to take that away. So that's one of the guardrails that I have. The next one comes to dialogue. I'm actually not going to quote anybody directly because these are, if I remember you said correctly, they're 2 newspaper accounts. And there are no direct quotes in the newspaper account. There's really recounting, so-and-so recounted, and then it goes on to say what they recounted.
Yeah, because it's a trial.
Yeah. So a recounting is not the same thing as a direct quote. So I'm not going to have anybody truly speak. And I generally tell people to avoid it. And I have a video about it. The other thing I'm trying to do is avoid presentism. I don't want to look at the past through my eyes and say, oh, this was bad and oh, this was good. I just want to say it is what it was. And then we'll let my reader take from the writing what they should. Now you're like, whoa, that's dramatic. Oh, I need to think. And I love that. Like, oh, how much of that could be real? Let me get in there with him. And so that's not presentism. That's actually transporting you back in time. And that's something I really like to do by setting. I did talk a little bit about judgments already with the placing the family there, who would be in the audience. And now I don't name anybody by name because I don't know who was in the audience, but I know the types of people who typically go to these kinds of things based on historical accounts and some fictional depictions. And then what is my other guardrail? Let's see. Judgment also applies to the type of action verbs and strong opinionated words I'm going to use. I'm going to try to balance that in there. And so with that guardrail, then I go forward. So what do you think so far?
Well, that's a lot to take in, and that font was really small.
That's why people can replay.
Yeah, that's true. I think the guardrails are a good idea. I think it is, there is some personal choice in there though too, right? So for me, for example, studying Ireland and particularly the famine period, we know that habeas corpus was suspended. And so to explain that a little bit, right? The right to have someone accuse you with a crime before they arrest you, basically. So they had to be able to say, we think you did this bad thing and now we're going to arrest you. But they suspended that in Ireland during this period. So for me, there's a walking in the door of a narrative experience. There is already this known historical fact about the population of Ireland. It does apply, whether we have direct evidence that it applies to Archibald or not. It applied to everybody. Right. So that I think those decisions probably have to come from the individual. They have to come with a deep exploration of what was actually happening in that place and time in that moment, right? Like, and so, yeah, I mean, going into this experience without having spent 10 or 15 years researching Macroom, Ireland, right? So it's a very different, I think your interpretation would probably be very different than mine just because of that background knowledge, right?
Yeah. So I'm glad you brought that up. The place that I would put that comes later. And I didn't put it in there because I didn't quite know how it fit. And so my thought was, you're going to tell the story about his childhood earlier. This is us jumping into setting I'm turning the page, and now I'm getting ready to learn about Archibald and him going to jail, right? So now I teased. I haven't given everything at the beginning.
Right.
I'm teasing you to get you to go, oh, wait, why was he accused? And so now I've hooked you into the story. So now I'm going to give you some background. The early childhood, I'm assuming, is in a previous chapter. This one is talking about him getting married, and it's also going to contextualize the world around him. And this was a rough draft, right?
Sure. Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally.
And so I'm sure it's missing some extra content. You're like, hey, why didn't she put that in there? It's probably because I was trying to get the bulk of the story set, get the sensory experience going, get what I was easily able to grab, especially since I went on so many tangents before. I was like, oh, this is the way we're supposed to go here. And I think the habeas corpus would come. So it's a festival day. I had to figure out what a pattern day was.
Right.
That took a lot. But once I figured that out, I was like, oh, he's at a festival. He's at a festival. And then there's this mass upset, and we have to be careful. Like you've said before, on one hand, some people call it a riot, but it is a public disturbance of 400 people or so.
It's a riot.
400 is the right number or not. That's the only number I have to go with.
Yeah, same.
And so either in him sitting in the likely Macroom Bridewell, the holding place before the trial, he's either that's a place to bring in the habeas corpus. I didn't do that, but I was going to leave that for you, or in the trial setting. Yeah. So we're going to come back to the trial setting here, and then we're going to go into the sentencing at the end, and then the worry that he has while he's going off to jail. So when you know more, you can add more and give it more flavor. And when you don't know enough, you don't want to overstate something.
Yeah, absolutely.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, and it's super important, right? And actually, to go back to our earlier point about AI, that's so important when we're using AI, because AI likes to conflate things. And so we learn from the tools that we're using, and we go, that isn't quite right. We need to catch that. And we have to catch it with ourselves as much as we catch it with the tools.
Mm-hmm. Well, and then from a writing perspective, that I'm not sure you've experienced, it likes to make things really poetic.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Okay.
Oh, yeah.
So it likes to make things really poetic, and it likes to land with, just, I kept telling it, no, this is where we're going to end the scene, and it was also talking about standing as a power.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Like, let's get in Archibald's mind. Sure, they're erased. You have to look up. But is he going to say, the law is looking down on me? Or he's looking at the people who's going to drop the hammer on him? And is drop the hammer English or Irish or American? I don't know. So I usually kind of pull some idioms out, but I'm sure some of my own idioms slip in.
Oh, yeah, for sure. Yeah.
But you really have to fight AI on flour, which I'm like, all right, this draft is 40% AI, just because, again, last night, 6 or 7 o'clock, I was like, no, I'm going in the wrong direction, right? Because it wants to make you happy, right?
Yeah, it does. Yeah. AI is built to serve. Yes.
Yeah. And so I was like, oh, it's the potato famine. It's the potato famine. And I was like, wait a minute, this is September 1845. And while so many sources try to say it was really, really bad in 1845, but I really dove in trying to understand what was happening in 1845. What would they have known? They wouldn't have known the scientific name of it yet.
No, not at all. No.
From some accounts that I read, even though it wasn't in Macroom, it was around Ireland, they're like, well, we just thought it was, some crops fail here, there, and everywhere, and the next year it's better. So there's still this hope for the next year.
Yeah.
That, it's not so great here, but we can, reach out. But it's September. They're still not in the mix. But while he's in jail, he's starting to worry.
Yeah, for sure. This is September is when they're first, August, September is when they're really first even catching on that the blight is actually happening. And reports are coming in from Europe as well. So it wasn't just isolated to Ireland. It was across Europe. Crops were failing. So they are still at that point where they're saying, we're really hopeful this is this is going to be one bad winter.
Yeah.
And then next spring we're going to replant and it's all going to be fine. So yeah, this is very early in the famine.
Yeah. Now, one thing I didn't incorporate, because I pulled it out when I was thinking, oh, this isn't going to matter. But then I was like, he's in jail. He's going to get the scuttlebutt because there's not else happening while you're awaiting trial. And that was the British Prime Minister was like, ooh, this is widespread. This isn't okay. And some of the sources I read said Parliament and that Prime Minister, I forget his name, I'm sorry, but they were like, all right, we're going to lift the corn tax and import because this is a little bigger than I thought. And I think that should be put in here somewhere, that it's up to you, of the relief, like, oh, is it really helping? I wonder. We can't say that it did directly help them, but it would have been news that he heard while he's hanging out in 80 days of jail.
Yeah, and so keep in mind too, he's inside a state-run institution. So at this point, he is probably getting better meals than his family is on the outside.
Okay.
So
that's not what I thought would have happened.
Yeah,
so that would be a reframing because you have more experience.
Right. So he is, I mean, and we actually talk about it in the podcast that Fiona mentions that some people, as we get through the years of the famine, they actually are intentionally trying to be arrested because they know they'll get fed, right? And the workhouse may be a little bit of food, but in jail, you are getting 3 square meals. So there is some guilt. There's got to be some guilt from Archibald, right? There's got to be like, I'm in jail and I feel bad because I'm not supporting my family and I'm not out there like helping them through this. But at the same time, I'm getting fed every day. And I don't know if my wife and children are eating.
Yeah. So the more you know, you can write that into the story. All I had was the descriptions and they seem pretty shallow. But then again, it was a loose Google search.
Right.
But this is always gets you started. And then it comes up with a whole lot more questions. I was just having a conversation with somebody online who's like, oh, I don't like to write. And I'm like, you need to incorporate writing into your research because it helps you ask more and better questions.
Absolutely.
To not understand the life, but it might lead you to other records you hadn't considered before. You're like, oh, there's no record. And then you're like, not looking for the right records.
And I can't say this loudly enough. It doesn't matter what writing style you have. If you have a more creative approach like Devin, or if you're more analytical in like a research, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if you write it on a Post-it note, if you write it in a document, you have to write as you go because it's the only way our brains process. We're all human. We all do it the same way.
Right. Yeah, for sure. For sure. So I do like your experience. Now, I did have to make some judgments with where he was taken because, this is the time that we have to, where is the fair? Festival Day.
I think it was towards, okay. Yeah, got it. Yep.
I cannot say to save my life.
Kildare.
And then you've got the room in front of it. And so one of the principles I teach on this channel is the need for a pronunciation guide.
Yes.
Now, I only saw 2 words that I'm like, I don't know how to say that. But I wouldn't put it in bracketed form because if you're doing this style, because it breaks the flow of reading.
Oh, sure. That makes sense.
Footnotes are your best friend.
That's right.
Use them up and wear them out, right? I wouldn't necessarily in this style put all the sources because it's narrative. It belongs at the end of the chapter.
Right.
It's more academic. Throw all the sources in because your audience wants to see the sources right away. But this would be a time where you put a little footnote and in the bottom, do the various ways. How do I say the 2 different names? Because again, and it might also be a quick line because the Kildare. Okay, I'm getting close.
You get there.
It was spelled a lot of different ways too, and you can briefly adjust it. This is how you say it, and here's some alternate spelling. You don't necessarily need to go on your whole diatribe and dissertation as to why you're going to use one spelling, but choose one, make that judgment, and then let other people know some alternative spellings. How do you say it? And then you just kind of move on. And that's always helpful in any of the writing, be it academic or more creative narrative style, is a pronunciation guide. What do you think about that?
It's a must. It's absolutely a must. So in this particular location, Kildare, is actually a really good example of that. So when I first came across that location in the research, this was a few years ago now, I went to some of my Irish colleagues and I said, how do you pronounce this? And they went, oh, wait a second. Do you have the right town? Because there are, if by memory, 3, 4, maybe 5 different locations across Ireland that are similarly spelled and have as many variations in the spelling. They're like, are you sure it's County Cork? And I was like, hang on, I think so, but let me back up. And so it's not just about pronunciation. It's not just about the flow of the narrative. It's actually, in this case, is this the right spot? Do I have the right county at this point? Turned out I did, so all fine there. But then when you Google it, you go, oh wait, that's not County Cork, that's the other one. And it happens in every location, right? It doesn't matter if it's Ireland or England or Wales or the United States or Canada or whatever. Like that happens all over the place. So and this is kind of an off the topic tangent, but a few years ago I was giving a lecture, and the case study that I was using was in London, Canada. And the person in the audience asked a question at the end, and they said, I don't understand what's happening, because London is not like this are not the right records for England. And I was like, right, because this case study's in London, Canada, not London. And so there's these like, but but again, like stereotypes, and just when we say London, everybody thinks England, right? Of course they do. But we have to be accurate. And your comment about footnotes, spot on, 100%. Use footnotes, use them all the time. Use them for all sorts of things. Like, I love actually how you've incorporated footnotes into your document, because it's not just about citations. It's about explaining what you have written. Right. That's the one I was actually just looking at. The man in custody is not named in the surviving account. Yeah. We don't know who that guy was. And so we don't break up the narrative in order to do that. We put it in a footnote, and I think it's beautifully done here.
Because some unknown man, he went, I mean, that's just so awkward.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Yep.
But we also don't, okay, so this was a judgment I was struggling with. I wanted him, later I have him reflecting, was it worth it? And you don't have to go there, but people in jail often think about their decision.
There's not really a lot else to do sometimes.
Whether they're awaiting the trial and sentencing, or after the sentencing happens, they think about their decisions. And I did phrase it later. Was it loyalty? Was it friendship? Was it just an accidental heat of the moment kind of thing that he got involved? He's probably rethinking his decision. And so I had to keep this unnamed man, but I can't go some random stranger, but I also can't assume it's a friend.
Right.
However, it very well could have been, because most people in a riotous, calamitous thing, if they don't get the berserker fever from a Viking, they're usually not going to try to get somebody out of custody.
Yeah.
They're usually not, you can't take this person. They'd be like, no, that's my friend, or my brother, or my whoever. You're like, I'm trying to get them away. And then, was that the right decision? Because now you're not with your wife, but now that you're going to bring in this element, maybe it was a good decision, because
but also we can't assume that this is his first arrest.
That's true too.
We can't assume that this is the first time he's been in a riot. Maybe he just really likes stirring up trouble. I don't know.
Exactly.
Maybe he has a personal grudge against that particular police officer that was involved. And we have no idea what else is going through Archie's brain here.
We don't.
And so your question is very accurate about, was he questioning his decisions sitting in jail? Maybe, but maybe in a very different way than we would expect.
Exactly.
Maybe he's sitting there going, dang it, I didn't punch the officer. I regret that I didn't hurt him more. I don't know.
Yeah. Well, and that's one of the ones I put in. Did he have a bruised pride because he wasn't successful in freeing him or himself?
Right. Maybe.
Right? And
how's his ego feeling right now?
So one of my tricks for writing, when we can't have dialogue and we can't get into people's minds, is I love to use questions in my narratives of the things he probably considered. Now, he might not have, but he could have. And so when I try to put a number of different ones in there, what was he thinking? Was it the right decision? All those kinds of things. It doesn't assume that he actually thought about it.
Right.
But these are considerations most people in that situation would have thought of. And so that's me making judgment without attributing actual decision thoughts to him.
Yeah.
And it's one of the tricks I really, really love to do.
Yeah.
So the other thing I wanted to do, and I dove into, and I'm hoping that you and the person you have the podcast with, every time I go live, I forget the things that I know before I... I know your name is Jen. Don't ask me anything else. Anyway, so it was Mr. Galloway he's the Crown solicitor.
Correct.
And he was making a case to the magistrates, and they were having this little conversation in one of the articles. Conversation, not direct quotes, but they were demonstrating.
Right.
The reporter was trying to say they're having a conversation, and he was connecting this trial to previous cases, which I'm assuming other people had been tried and done. And then the sentencing scene came through, and so it was the B word. It's not a bad B word, but it's a B word in the article, like the first paragraph. Let me see if I can figure it out. It's like a bandum. He's tying it over. Here, let me do Galway. Galway. That band, B-A-N-D.
Oh, Bandon Sessions.
Yes.
Okay. That's a place.
Okay. It is a place.
Yes.
And from what I also understand, it is something that because these are quarterly sessions. Correct. I'm like, why is he there for so long? Yep. There's these quarterly sessions, and from what I gathered, but it could be wrong. What I gathered, there were lots of people arrested on that day, not just him.
Yes.
And he's trying to tie it to the other people because he's trying to sway the magistrates to give him a harsher sentence.
Correct.
And so I did bring that in.
I think it's correct anyway. That's my interpretation.
Okay.
What it feels like to me, having done the research, is that this is a large occurrence, right? They estimate 400 people involved. Macroom's facilities can't hold all those people. They wouldn't necessarily have held all 400 anyway. They would have picked, in theory, they would have handpicked some people to make an example out of. And that's my interpretation of what's happening with that dialogue between Galway and the court. Mm-hmm. He is basically trying to say, we need to show the rest of the community that this kind of activity will not be taken lightly. Mm-hmm. And we need to make sure that people understand that we're going to punish them for this. And so we're going to use these people, both Archie and the people that were held and tried at the Bandon sessions. Mm-hmm. We're going to use them as an example to make sure that this doesn't happen again in our community. And of course, none of that works. But because the people are angry and they're acting like this routinely. But you also have to consider that Ireland has actually just gone through this whole, multiple decades worth of social uprise type of activity. And so everything is considered nefarious by the state. There isn't really any action you can do. You can meet your friend for a coffee at the local coffee shop or for a pint at the local pub, and that could be considered nefarious, and you could be arrested for having that conversation. So everything is seen that way. Everything is dramatic. Everything needs a harsher sentence.
Right. Well, and it's also the representative of the Crown. I went and tried to figure out, who Crown, and apparently it's Queen Victoria at the time period, but she wasn't mentioned yet. So I
she wouldn't have been
in. Huh?
She wouldn't have been. This is far too minor.
Well, yes. And one of the things that I like to do is add some anchoring details for a reader that is very small, but it doesn't have any suggestions. So it's disturbing the peace of the Queen, the Queen's peace. Well, if you just say disturbing Queen Victoria's peace, and it's just like this one little biblo, what you do is you anchor it for your reader. Oh, this is Queen Victoria time there. I mean, they've got the potato famine, but not everybody.
Not everybody's going to put those things together.
Think of Queen Victoria being the Queen of England, and then you're talking about Ireland. They're still not thinking England. I mean, you can say absentee landowners in England all you want, but as soon as you have a Queen Victoria reference, it's like, I know the time and place we're talking about. But you don't make it so big. So I don't even know if you saw that I did that in there. But if we did a Google search, we could, or a little Control F search, we'd be able to find the Victoria, and you see how it's just minor in there. And yet it's like, oh, that's what that time is. So I like to incorporate historical details without beating people over the head with it or stopping. This is the time of Queen Victoria. But if it says the Queen's peace, I go, well, what queen are we talking about? Slip it in, move on, and you've just had this powerful impact on your story.
Or, you could, I found the mention. You could list out her full title because she wasn't referred to as Queen Victoria of England.
Yeah, absolutely.
But that would take up like half a page. So, make editorial choices.
That way. It was right. And see, look, it's right before the abandoned session.
Yeah, it is so right there,
it's so quick, but it has this powerful impact. Now, I'm going to scroll up a little bit more. Okay. Here is one of my absolute favorite things to do in narrative article is text boxes, sidebars, whatever you want to call these things, and put some details that if you put this huge list in the main body of the story, it slows down the story, but it is actually kind of relevant and important. There's 19 people in the jury. That's very different than the United States.
Yes.
And then looking at the names, there's several people that seem to potentially be related. Now, we don't have to go research all these people. I don't think that's going to help the story, but it is nice to be able to have this list broken off and segmented so the story keeps moving while that information doesn't disappear. Because I don't know if you're the one that extracted all those names from the newspaper article or used AI to help you to extract it, either one, but that's a long list of names. Yeah.
A long list. Yeah.
So, I would just look and I would skip down to the next piece of action. So that's one of the things I really like to do. Another thing, so the twist was, what were the other possible reasons people could have been fighting that day? It was a festival day, and festivals, there's police presence because I don't know. I've seen it at rodeos in Texas. For some reason, the later it is, the drunker people are, the more they get into fights. So it is a festival day, and that could have been one of the reasons that things escalated. And it's likely to bring in the conversation. I set the festival thing. I was talking about the things on people's mind. I don't say what his feelings are, whether he's engaged in these conversations, but the people at these festivals are having those conversations. And that's a great place to use the what's on the hearts and minds of people and talk about the conversations at this place were happening with that when you don't have a direct, because we don't know if he's for or against or the instigator or the leave me alone,
Right, sure.
But those conversations were happening. Those frustrations were there. When people get together, they talk politics.
Well, and in this case, right, just we talked earlier about the timing of this, right, in terms of how it relates to the famine. It's very early in that period, but Michaelmas Day is typically the celebration of the end of the harvest. So it's the start of a new farming period, but it's also the start of a new legal quarter. So this is why they're having the sessions then. It's traditionally like a day of prosperity where you have all your crops in and you are able to celebrate all of that hard work. And you're able to go, we are going to have a nice, comfortable winter because look at all of this bounty that we have as a result of our labor. But they don't have that this year. Right. So this is really the first big national day where they all go, something's wrong. And this is so for me, I've always seen that particular day as this is supposed to be a day of celebration. And this is our annual event saying it's a religious event, right? Of course. And so they're annually saying we are in our peak moment of prosperity, but in this particular year, they are all realizing that is not happening, and they're scared.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, there's politics involved. Yes, there's anger and a lot of emotion. But I think for a lot of those 400 people, what's behind this is fear of what's coming. Because they're already poor and starving and destitute and having a really hard time keeping a roof over their head. They're already struggling to supply their families with food. And yet now here's the realization of the potato crop being diseased and this is going to be really bad. And and you are right that when alcohol mixes with a strong emotion, things happen. So it is a culmination in my mind. It's kind of a bit of a culmination of all of these things kind of coming together and everybody on the same day going, oh, we're really in for it this winter. This is going to be bad.
Yeah. And the one thing I didn't decide to incorporate, it could have been involved, and it's left to you to decide how much you want to put that into or not, was you talked about, and I know this is going to sound racist, but it's not, it is the white boy group. Now,
Oh, yes, the white
your
boys,
notes, the notes centered around 1822, and yet they are still active at this time period. However, I didn't see anything directly, or I missed it because I wasn't paying that much attention. I didn't see a connection to this event being white boy related, and I didn't see this connection of him being a part of it. However, I did see a connection that sentencing, if it was considered white boy related sentencing, it would have been harsher. And so in the sentencing section, trying to frame his 4-month sentence, like, is it harsh? Is it lenient? I just kept thinking back to the sentencing of Ross Poldark's Tenet, that he was trying to get some leniency. And the guy's like, I was lenient. He wasn't transported for 7 years.
Yeah.
He's like, but he's 2 years in prison.
But he's not
sick.
been
like,
shipped.
What's up?
Yeah.
You know? And so I did, if I remember correctly, it was my intent if it wasn't my success, because that was the last part that went in at the end. I do believe that I said it could have been longer. It could have been, hard labor. It could have been transportation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But he got 4 months, and 4 months was something that was a charge. 1 to 6 months was for a simple riot. So like a festival, drunk people got upset, woohoo, fireworks, that, whatever. Granted, this is me from America projecting onto Ireland, but they had these classifications, and I was trying to bring them in. And since I didn't have full citations on it, I kept it kind of vague, and then back and get a few more hardcore facts to do the comparison of the scope. But this 4 months was towards a little more of the lenient side of things.
Definitely.
Because they could have done 2 years or 2 years with hard labor or transportation. And so there is a little element of relief. Okay, because the maximum was 6 months in this category, from what I gathered. He'd already done 80 days, and now he's going to do 120. So he'd wound up getting 6 months, because I also made the assumption, and I wrote a note for you, it's most likely assumption, he could have been let go on bail, but I don't know if a lot of people have enough money that are standing to offer for him. And so I did suggest, he didn't have anybody to post bail. And then because it was a riot, I don't think they were going to let him go on bail. But I also do find it interesting, like you were saying, they don't like the riots and they don't like the complaints and whatever. But it's December, and the magistrates realize this is going to be a tough winter.
Yeah.
Do we really want to come down hard on this person, or do we want to go, okay, it's really more of a simple riot, we think it's worth, maybe they got the better ringleaders, because they do reference the B word, bandits,
the bandit sessions.
The other sessions. And he's trying to the barrister, the solicitor of the crown, he's trying to make the connection so he can get the full extent of the law on this guy. But what if it's like, he was fighting a police officer? That's 2 years, but I can understand what he was doing. It was kind of, whatever. And so somehow they decided 4 months. And so I think that section kind of frames it. It's still not great.
Or maybe the jail was just full.
And that's one too. I hadn't even considered that one yet.
That just popped in my head right now. It's all of that's really interesting, because and here's another one for you to play with mentally. The general sense in England, there was a lot of people, probably the majority of people in England during this period, really thought that the famine was divinely chosen, right? There was a sense that Ireland is overpopulated. The Catholics have just gone too far. They have worked themselves into poverty. Mm-hmm. If they just pulled themselves up a little, if worked a little bit harder, they could do better. And that was the general thought process of the Victorian age. This is not
Yeah.
I'm not overgeneralizing.
No,
that is what Victorians thought. So there's a huge group of people, including politicians and leaders in England, saying, this is just divine intervention, like fixing this Ireland's overpopulation problem for us. And so we're not going to send any relief at all. We're not going to do anything. So now take that thought down to the court situation where Archibald is facing a judge, and the judge gives him what we have just discussed is probably a pretty lenient sentence. Maybe our judge is of a different opinion. Maybe he doesn't see it as divine intervention.
Right.
Maybe the solicitor for the crown does. Maybe he's fighting so hard because the Irish Catholics deserve this. What's happening to them now?
Yeah.
So yeah.
So I did see that, and I made a judgment not to put it yet in the story because famines did happen every so often.
This is definitely not their first. They've done this rodeo before.
It was isolated different communities.
Yeah.
This is the first time it's big, right? And even the Parliament dude, the Prime Minister guy, whatever his
I love it.
Sorry, my UK folks, but he's a Prime Minister, and I can't remember his name. I think it starts with a P, but I think I'm way off too. But anyway, in October, he did repeal the corn laws to bring corn in. He's like, oh, this is a problem.
Yep.
And then later, as time goes on, there are just very much surely those sentiments because it keeps happening.
And they put the corn laws back into place and they stopped that shipment of corn. So it's Robert Peel is who you're talking about. So Robert Peel, that's the Prime Minister.
Thank you. It was a P?
It was.
Yes. I was like, RP, some guy named RP. That's what was going through my head, but I couldn't remember him. Hey, I barely know the governor of Texas right now, So, anyway, now that would be a time because we leave him in jail, right, or going to jail, right? Yeah. And I didn't know which jail he would have gone to because from what I understand, and I made the assumption that he went to the Macroon Bridewell because that was the temporarily holding cell from the area where I gathered for people awaiting trial for the sessions to come through. And then once you had your session, you went to something a little more permanent. Is that correct?
Right. He probably stayed while he was waiting trial, he was probably in Macroom. And maybe the Bridewell, maybe the castle, like literally like a dungeon style.
Oh, okay.
And like you can picture that.
Yeah. I saw the picture online. It was kind of cool.
Right. I can't wait. Someday I'm going to go there.
I'll go with you.
Okay.
I love castles.
For his actual sentence time, that 4 months, he was probably held at County Cork Prison.
Okay. Yeah. That's kind of where I thought, but I didn't want to, I was going to leave that to you to decide where do you think he's going to go, but he's going to go to a more permanent holding cell. Yeah. But in the next chapter, that's when I would definitely dive into, even though you don't, from what I received between 1845 and 1851, we don't have a lot.
There's not
about him.
Yeah.
That's a perfect time to set the stage of the Catholic conspiracy of God killing everybody, or anyway, it was something an anti-Catholic sentiment that this famine was an attack on Irish, right?
Yeah.
And the change of Parliament and therefore the reinstatement of the corn laws. That is a perfect time to give that historical, because it's going to bridge into why he probably left Ireland and went to Wales. So that sometimes when we're writing, we have to go, okay, there's so much we can cover.
Oh gosh, yeah.
But this chapter has one job, and I have a video coming out. I just filmed it about what is the job of a chapter. And for me, for your story that I was sharing with you, the job of this chapter was to talk about him going to this festival day, it not ending on the best of note for him. And then 80 days later, he's at trial. He receives a sentence. There's some ambiguity about whether it was lenient or not. And then he's going to be worrying about his wife and how bad the famine's going to get. Yeah. And so all the rest of that stuff, I think, is perfect for the next kind of chapter. And then you can get into his transportation, Migration, not
Migration.
transportation. Although he did transport, anyway, migration to Wales and what happens there. And then you can set up all the history, but then you do have him getting involved with another criminal act, repeat the process of getting on his shoulder and going through the process with him. So there's, in my style of writing, I don't want the whole thing to be narrative moments. Some chapters are transitional bridge chapters, and they take you from one scene to the next, sets the stage, helps you understand the context, and then you get to an action. Or, yeah, this is an action. This is a story with action. There was some action, and then there's a sentence. So that way you can get between the high points that you do have. So those are some of the things. Now, I also did something that you may or may not like, because it leans towards the dramatic. Let me see. Father.
Where are you at?
Okay. It's when he's in jail. Okay. By evening, Archibald Mackenzie, son of a former keeper of the Macroom Bridewell, was no longer celebrating the festival day, but behind the bars his fathers used to keep. So, you can like it, you didn't like it, but it was just ironic that his dad was a prison keeper, and now he's in prison.
I don't think it's, ironic maybe, but I actually really liked that.
Oh, yay!
Couple of sentences, because it's one of the points that we actually picked. So when you and I were first talking about doing this together, one of the things we said was, how would you write the story versus how we wrote it for the podcast? And that is one of the things that we really pulled into the podcast, is this moment of like, it's not just that he got arrested, it's that he is being held in the same place where his father was working for the man, if you will, right? And so he has gone from this family situation where his dad is kind of up here-ish. He's not high on the social ladder by any means, but he's higher than the neighboring Catholic families. And then so dad dies, and Archibald starts to sink lower because he becomes just a regular laborer, we think. And then he marries a Catholic woman and converts to Catholicism himself. And so he just keeps going down that social ladder. And so the moment of truth, the moment of reckoning probably is this first, well, if this is the first arrest, whatever his first arrest was,
right,
is that moment of going, my dad was here and now I'm here. And
my dad was on the other side.
My dad was on the other side of these bars.
I'm on this side wanting to get out.
Yeah. And so I have a lot of mixed feelings about this, because there's a part of me that wants to go, Archibald was just not a law-faring guy. Like he didn't, but then there's another part of me that goes, well, but he was up against all these incredible, difficult moments. And then he gets swept up in the crowd. Like maybe he's not necessarily a bad person. Maybe he's actually just really motivated by the fact that his family is hungry. But then again, maybe he's not a great guy, because later in Wales, as you've already said, he gets arrested again, right? He gets involved. And so maybe he really is, maybe he's very politically motivated and he wants Irish freedom. And so his moments of coming up against the authorities is his political activism, if you will. And so there's all these different elements, but that component of father to son is so striking to me. It is so striking, especially in a country, in England, Wales, Ireland, Scotland, the idea of passing down your occupation from father to son is so predominant. And so if you see a blacksmith, the son is probably a blacksmith, right? And if you find an agricultural laborer, the son is probably an agricultural laborer, at least for a while. So this idea that this father and son combo don't do that, and in fact move in very opposite directions, is really interesting to me.
And the other thing I like about this is connecting a previous chapter to, like, it shows that so many things are interconnected, right? Because what can you do in a later chapter? You can talk about him going to jail again and his reflections on, wait, I've kind of been down this road before. Now, I like what you were saying is that you really don't know if he was a bad guy or if this was the first time or multiple times he's been arrested. We don't know. Trust your readers. to take their own lessons away. Some people will read this story and think he was a political activist fighting against the machine. But what if he wasn't?
Yeah.
So we don't want to say he is,
right.
But if somebody reads that into it, all power to them, right?
Yep.
Some of them is going to look at the poverty of the situation and go, yeah, I can understand him being caught up in an angry mob, because I know I keep going back to a Poldark, but sometimes we have to have these frame of references to help us write a story. But I keep thinking about when the tenants they were hungry, and all the Warlegans did was, and their compatriots, was raise the price. And they would say, why breed if you can't feed your family? We're a different class from them. So there is this class struggle.
Absolutely.
And so a riot ensued, and they were breaking into the corn storehouse.
Okay.
But we don't have that detail, right? We don't know. And so, sorry, we need to leave some of those decisions for our own readers so that they can take away. But somebody might also go, he was drunk at a festival. Like,
right, totally.
Don't be drunk at a festival.
Yeah, it is really interesting that how much of our own personal lived experience we infer in the material that we're reading, whether it's fiction, nonfiction, family history, anything, right? And I know you're an avid writer and an avid reader. I am an avid reader, but I definitely, even when I read fiction, I find myself having to kind of step back and go, oh, wait, this isn't actually about me.
Right.
But yes, I've had moments of poverty in my life. And so when I first stumble across this story and I realize what he's going through, and the fact that I can't trace an occupation, which tells me he's probably not working consistently, that immediately pulls on my heartstrings and goes, oh, I've been there. I've had to ask those questions about how am I going to feed my family this week. Yeah. So for me, reading this article for the first time, that was probably one of the first things that struck me was this guy is coming from a place I understand. Mm-hmm. This desperation of taking care of your family.
Yeah. And then other people have experience with poverty and people getting arrested, and they would be like, that jerk, he doesn't care about his family. Does he even know what this does to them?
Right.
And this sets him up the later and later. So Andy has the vampire grandfather that we like to talk about him. He was made the news for sucking on his blood while in jail. So we like to call him the vampire.
I mean, that fits. I think that's appropriate.
I know, right? But anyway, his criminal history began because he stole a side of beef. This is after his wife and a child dies. Likely he's a mess. Yeah, he's an emotional mess. He was working, but that just devastated him. There was a massive flood that came through. You can relate and understand. And I'm like, okay, so is this a Jean Valjean situation? If I'm remembering that story well. That they stole for the love of family. But then he became like a hardened criminal, and you're like,
he made a decision at some point in there. He made a decision.
Exactly. And so when you get to the next story, you don't want to necessarily paint him bad, because what if he's caught up innocently again?
Right.
However, you don't want to paint him all good, because what if he's a jerk?
Yeah.
And so when we don't have a lot of records, we do have to make some judgments, and our bias will come in.
Of course.
In an interview with Carol Baxter, if you're on the shore of, and I've been there to in Australia, in New Zealand, when the first fleet arrived for the first time, is it an arrival of ships or is it an invasion? And then I'm like, or is it somewhere in between? What are those strange things? And what does this mean? But now then again, they're very seafaring people. They have a history of being across the ocean. So they got the idea of a boat, but these are bigger boats than they've seen before. Yeah. And so where do you land? It's okay if you land with arrival. It's okay if you land with invasion. Just do your best not to project yourself into the story so much, but you will be doing some judgments. And if somebody gets upset with it, they can write their own version, right?
I was to say they can write their own story.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this article online for people to look at. And then if they have suggestions on how to improve it or questions that need to be considered or experiences they have after reading it, leave those in the comments section below. And then Jen's going to get her own copy of this, and I'm going to hope that someday she shares with me her final draft. And even if it's not the whole story, I would love to her final draft to see the decision she makes, the correction she made.
Someday when I'm not busy.
Or might not make, be like, you're retiring in 2 years. I got another 10.
I have a few.
Yeah, so I'm the one with 2. She's the one with a few. But anyway, someday it'll be there for her to be inspired. And yeah, I really want people to go check out the FindMyPast. I'm setting you up for a pitch on your podcast.
You. Yeah.
I'm just not doing a good job of it. But I want people to also go listen to the podcast that you're going to tell them about and then compare the different approaches, because you are telling a story.
Yeah.
And even if it slants more academic research, and then decide for themselves, where do you land? So tell us where they can listen to that podcast, and then also tell them where they can follow you, because you're just amazing.
Oh, thank you. So yeah, A Family History Of is the podcast. It's available wherever you get your podcast. So if you're not a podcast person, you can listen to them on Spotify or just online. You can just Google A Family History Of podcast and it will pop up for you. You can also watch them on YouTube. So we do record for YouTube, and it is just, you're watching 2 people talking, but there's little snippets of documents and stuff that our editors throw in there. So YouTube is a popular option, I think, for genealogists. I think that's what a lot of people are used to. The idea behind the podcast is to tell the major stories of British and Irish history through the eyes of an individual family. So what we're doing is taking genealogical research and combining it with historical research and meshing those 2 things together. So my guest and I sit down and we talk about a big event like the Great Famine or the Blitz. But we try to talk about it bringing our expertise into this space. So I talk about the genealogy and the process and the individual people, and the historian comes in and talks about this big moment and goes, well, yeah, have you thought about this, or have you thought about that context, or this was happening, or this happened next, or whatever. So it's a melding, I hope, of kind of all of our interests and the best of both worlds, because there's that genealogy bit, but it's not just his father was so-and-so and his brother was John and his sister was Mary. Like, it's not that. It's very much a storytelling experience, I hope. So you can get it wherever you get your podcast, but also on YouTube. There is, well, I was going to say something else.
Okay.
Yeah, this is what I want to say to your audience in particular. If you listen to the podcast, I would love to know what you think. I have gotten, we get comments to our customer support channels and all that kind of thing, but I really want to hear from other genealogists if this is working for you, if this is something that you enjoy listening to. I know that for a lot of us, podcasts are new, although I've been listening to podcasts for a long time. I love podcasts. But I really want to know if the genealogy audience is digging this content, because that's who I'm speaking to. And that's what I'm envisioning in my head. I'm coming to this project with a lot of enthusiasm as a family historian, and I want that enthusiasm to be portrayed. And so if you have comments or feedback on the podcast, I'd love to hear it.
Absolutely. Now, I purposely didn't listen to your episode because I didn't want to be swayed. I wanted to show some and discuss some of the pitfalls writers fall into.
Sure.
And I also wanted to see, that is so cool that we both hit on the father-son connection.
Yeah.
Because some writing principles are universal, though they happen no matter what happens. Sometimes we just don't always give it a name, but there's also many ways to tell a story. Sure. So I am looking forward. It is on my list of things to listen to within the next week. So as we wrap up, I do need to tell my audience that Family History Fanatics and Write Your Family History channel, I am filming the last videos before we close down this office and we move to Arizona. So keep the comments coming. If there is a lag, it might be something related to the move, but by August, we should be in the new studio, and I can't wait to see you there. Lots of comments, lots of love, and you can find all of Jen's links in the description box below. Bye, everybody.